interestingly enough, especially as I find myself in Germany right now today, my first job as a cameraman was for ZDF. Well, I started actually quite a long time before the Star Wars film. My first film was a very interesting movie, shot on a semi-amateur basis, but it was a full-length movie, and it imagined Britain occupied by Germany. It was called It Happened Here, and I shot that when I was 22, and that in fact launched me. And then I worked with another director whose name is Peter Watkins, who was notorious for having made a film about an atomic attack on Britain, and it was banned by the people who commissioned it, the BBC. But I shot a film with him, which George Lucas saw when he was a student. It was called Privilege, and that's why George Lucas called me initially for the first Star Wars film, and I went to see him for that film. And I said to him straight away, I'm probably not the right director of photography for your film because I don't have experience in visual effects. You should have. The man who shot 2001, which was the big science fiction film, almost a reference point for everybody. And the studio agreed with me and said to him he should have somebody more experienced than I was for his first film. Well, it was actually his second film, but it was the first Star Wars film. But he ended up with a very, very good director of photography, but they were not in sympathy with each other at all. And to the point where they didn't want to work together again. So I got a call about the second one and went to meet the director, Irvin Kershner. I didn't meet directly with George Lucas. And we just enjoyed each other's company, and he liked the work that I'd done with Ken Russell, Listomania. And lucky enough, he asked me to shoot the film. That's how it happened. I actually said to Irvin Kershner, look, I went up for the first film, the first Star Wars film, and I said, I don't have visual effects experience, and I have to tell you that I still don't have visual effects experience for a science fiction film. And Lucas over the phone said, that's not a problem, you'll come out to see us in San Francisco, and we'll discuss it all there. So that's how it started. When it came to David Cronenberg, I had spent some years not finding the sort of projects I wanted to work on. When I got a call from him, I have to confess I didn't know any of his films because I thought of him as a horror film director, and I don't like horror films. So I'd never seen any. I have to be honest and say that, and I'm still slightly ashamed at the same time that I went in naked in a sense, not knowing his work. But I'd read the script, and I thought the script promised to be, the script had the possibility of making a really good movie. And I met him, and we got on extremely well straight away. We had something going between us, very of sympathy, intellectual sympathy, and we both liked love movies. We don't always have the same taste in everything, but we have an enthusiasm for the medium. He has a very challenging mind. He's extremely intelligent. He must be the most intelligent director I've ever worked with, and the projects he was involved with were always very challenging, and they were not violent just for the sake of violence. They sometimes had an element of violence in them, but it was always for a good reason and not for the sake of violence. I have to say that I don't like horror films, and I don't like shooting them because I personally, in my work, I have to believe that what is happening in front of the lens is real. And if it feels fake or false in any way, I know that the scene is not a successful scene, even if it feels false from the acting point of view. So because I have to believe that it's true, if I see something very unpleasant and cruel through the lens, I feel very uncomfortable, because I believe it is actually happening. And on the few occasions when we have, with David, when I've shot something violent or with a lot of blood in it, I've had to close my eyes. And sometimes in the first few films on which we worked together, I handed him the camera. And I said, well, look, because I was always operating the camera myself on his films, I said, you do this one. And I'll watch I'll half watch with my eyes half closed. Would be equally uncomfortable for me each time. But the challenge of his films is not just a challenge to shoot something violent, because that's only an occasional and small element in the films. The attractive nature of the projects for me each time was that each one was a challenge to realize. They were always unusual projects, like Crash. I think that reading the book, before the film was made, one would have said, how can one possibly make a film of this? That was a challenge each time. And one film was never the same as the previous one. And I loved that side of it. In this case, I did read the book, but normally I confess that I don't, in most cases, read a book from which the film script is taken. Because probably afterwards I will be confused as to what is in each one, what is in the script and what is in the book. The short answer is how I translated the script to the screen in visual terms, I don't know. And David himself always says to me, the day before or the night before we're going to do our first day shooting, he says, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I say that I feel the same. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I have certain ideas, but I work from the inside, from the script, from the feeling the script gives me, and from my guts. I don't impose an intellectualized look on the feel, on the film. I think my style varies from film to film, but it's not a conscious thing. And I certainly didn't want to give you the opportunity to say that it looks like eye candy, because that's a terrible expression, a pejorative expression. I didn't do shots that were pretty for the sake of prettiness in Crash. I think it has a hard, tough nature to it in the script, and I hope I like my work. In my work, I seek to be expressive of the emotions of the contents of the script. If it turns out to be striking looking, that's all to the good, but I don't want it to be pretty. Working on that film was a physically tough experience. The weather was cold. We were often outside. Sometimes we were outside at night on the back of a truck filming cars. It wasn't easy, but on the other hand, my memories of it are of having great fun. I laughed a lot on that film. The atmosphere of shooting on a film with David Cronenberg was always very relaxed and designed and directed to help everybody do their best work under as little tension as possible. Of course, in movie making, we're all under stress and tension to do our work as well as possible, in the time given, and we're all exposed, in a sense. The actors are exposed to the gaze of the viewer of the film, and certainly a cinematographer is a sort of performance artist doing his or her work in front of everybody. But I had great fun, and some of the situations were so potentially funny, although at first sight, the film is not a comedy at all, but some of the scenes in which the characters have, for instance, to make sex in a very, very small car, they have their comic side to them, and I found a lot to challenge me as a cameraman, but also a lot to have fun with. The atmosphere is always calm on these shoots, as calm as possible, and I think that helps the actors to relax. We were sometimes shooting in demanding situations in which we were exposed to risks of having an accident in a car, but not all the film was like that. There are one or two scenes shot in a studio. Most of the other scenes are, all the other scenes are on location. What did I do in myself to make the actors feel comfortable? Well, it's a quiet set. When I'm preparing, I'm behind the camera myself. I have a very, very good assistant, and then I have the electrical team, but basically a smallish team, because these are films in which the budget won't extend to having a very large team. The films are always on the edge of challenging the budget. They're always very ambitious. But that doesn't mean that we had lots and lots of people around us. We are the only people, or I'm the only person on the film who's working 100% of the time. Everybody has to wait for me. I watch a rehearsal, then I discuss it with the director, and then I start preparing the shot. We shoot the shot, and I have to start preparing the next one. There's no time in which to sit down and talk about or listen to gossip about what happens off the set. My wife often asks me if I have any interesting stories to tell about the set, and I usually disappoint her, simply because I don't have time to think about anything except the job in hand. Well, I thought the reaction of the public, or of the newspapers, or particularly the Daily Mail, was ridiculous. But it's the Daily Mail that has been fighting for Brexit, so I have no respect for that paper at all. The film was, in fact, I believe, banned from one or two areas in London. Perhaps it was all good publicity for the film. I don't know, but I didn't take it very seriously. The reaction of my friends and my wife in particular is always very supportive, and she and I had and have a very good relationship with David Cronenberg and with his wife, who unfortunately died a year ago. We were close friends. Luckily, there weren't any accidents, but I personally nearly had 2 accidents. There was one on which I was on a camera dolly, which is a very heavy object, on the back of a truck, with the car on the back of the truck at the same time, and we wanted to do a tracking shot with the car moving, and our truck changed direction in an unexpected way, which is something that is discouraged from happening because it's quite dangerous when the crew doesn't expect a change of direction. And the grips who were holding the dolly had a great deal of trouble holding it and preventing it falling off the back of the truck, and I was aware during the shot that that was happening. So that wasn't a comfortable feeling. And another time, we were using an elevated freeway for a night scene with a sort of car chase. But we could only use one side of it for both directions. The police closed one side of the freeway for us. So we were able to go both one direction for filming and another direction to put ourselves in the right place for the next take. And I went up to have a look at it before we were ready to shoot, and I went up by taxi with somebody who had never been up there in the wrong direction before. When he drove back in the wrong direction, he was not aware that the freeway came to a sudden stop. And we were within only 20, 30 meters of going over the top of the freeway and tumbling down onto the next level. I had to scream at the driver for him to stop. But luckily we didn't have any accidents, just near accidents. The most amusing challenge I had, I think, was to shoot a scene on a balcony overlooking a network of freeways near the beginning of the film, on a real location, a tiny apartment with a minuscule balcony, just room for the actress. I'm trying to remember the measurements of it, but it was very shallow and had no depth. So the reverse shots on the characters' faces, because the actors are looking at the traffic with the camera behind the actors, and we needed to do some reverses, some shots in the other direction. We decided to do them in a studio. So the amusing challenge was to recreate the light in the studio and make it feel as real as the location felt. I like that. I've always enjoyed that kind of challenge. I believe you still can't get very close to actors with a drone. They are still potentially dangerous. And they don't really permit great, really fine precision work in close to actors. We might have been able to do the whole thing in the studio today. We would have done the shots over the shoulders of the actors with a green screen in front of the actors. And then in post-production we would have replaced the green screen by the actual location, and it would have looked real. I think it would be done this way today because they would say it's quicker and in the end cheaper and more controllable. I personally don't like a lot of green screen shooting. I've done a lot of it, but I know that some films have been made using almost entirely green screen. I think it's difficult to shoot that way. It's not stimulating for the actors. They have nothing to react to because there's nothing there. And the same goes for myself. I need to see something, to feel something and actually see it, to understand how I'm going to photograph it. The films don't resemble each other. They're different each time. And that's something that I really enjoyed in my long relationship with David Cronenberg. We were never going to repeat ourselves.